I opened the door.
A door? What'd you use, dynamite?
Guns are not toys, Mac.
He has a gun now?
After enjoying the horrors of deep space, you can now enjoy the horrors of the deep sea. Stasis Bone Totem is a standalone sequel to Stasis and Kane, so you can enjoy it perfectly fine without knowing a thing about those games. If you do, you'll have more insight into the world and know terms like products already, so beyond a few throwbacks, there's nothing essential. Since I did make a video on the previous game, I'll talk about those connections more when I get deeper into the story, but I like that it has elements that could work in different ways if you are a newcomer, like how casual people are about the hellish biotech everywhere. Still, I don't want to get too far ahead, so here's the setup. Oh, this is gonna go great again. You play as Charlie and Mac, and today, the gang explores a derelict oil rig, and it's guaranteed to be the worst ocean outing since Cold Fear, or Virus. Charlie and Mac are a married couple who have fallen on hard times. They are drowning in debt, and their daughter Hope actually drowned when she tried to save her teddy bear who was swept out to sea. The bear, named Moses, is also struggling with blame and guilt. He's an AI smart toy who's having difficulty even fully comprehending it. Mac holds a lot of resentment towards Moses and dismisses his intelligence. Moses appears to not fully grasp death and brings her up to Mac a lot, which is of course upsetting. However, him being so little is useful for salvaging, so Charlie's rigged him up to be able to hack computers and help them in their task. So, you play as Moses too.
I miss Hope, Charlie.
I do too.
I miss playing with her.
I do too.
Is it wrong to wish I could stop missing her? Sometimes I feel guilty for wishing it.
No, I think that, it isn't wrong at all.
My Charlie.
One of the most immediate differences if you are coming from Stasis is how much more character-driven Bone Totem is. Where John Marichek was a ragdoll of human suffering, here, the actual ragdoll is one of the more interesting video game characters I've seen in ages. They give you way more opportunities to care more, which is good when the game will last you at least a dozen hours or so. Anyhow, the rig is called Deep Sea 15 and is owned by the Kane Corporation, a gigantic company and a major religion. Kane offers a brain implant that, on death, will transfer your entire consciousness into a virtual afterlife. There, in the Nexus, you will live with your loved ones forever as long as they opted in. Heaven is real, and it's also Amazon Prime. Again, business as usual in the setting is already bizarre and unsettling. So when you start finding corpses of Kane employees arranged in ritualistic patterns, this is not considered a deal breaker. Mac isn't happy with it because it could still be an active crime scene and does want to go, but Charlie reminds him that they have seen bodies and other heinous things on the job before and they really need this money. So, Bone Totem is all about seeing how far they'll be pushed for Hope. And good God does it go far.
What in Kane is that?
I don't want to show too much, but let's talk about the visuals. While Kane showed some clear roughness into moving over into proper 3D, 6 years of experience later, and Bone Totem nails it. Background elements can still be 2D or 2.5D, but a lot has been fully converted over to the third dimension, even if it might not look it. Surfaces in the environment are a lot more reactive to light and shadow, which, beyond just more realism, adds a lot more depth into the image. Your character can be obscured by smoke and fog, and it is very atmospheric. Looking back, John Stasis was an impressive sprite to the degree that people didn't think he was a sprite. I was unsure of that shift at first, but on the character side, it's such a huge improvement. It's several techniques coming together to make an incredibly rich-looking game. You're also given a nice variety of places to explore that shift and evolve as the story goes forward. All the close-ups they use for puzzles or investigating look great for an adventure game. Almost everything has lots of weathering and little details. And sometimes the puzzles themselves are just as unpleasant as the world they're in. Most of the deranged, horrible things you'll have to do will be front and center. You only use items in the close-up windows now, and never from the zoomed-out perspective. Which I do think the game could have benefited from a few more angles on these, but it does mean less confusion. The actual art direction's cassette future combined with Nightmare Biotech feels like something that would clash, but it actually does come together. It's one of the most visually interesting and atmospheric isometric games I've played overall, not just an adventure one. They made so many creative decisions, like take Moses. They could have easily made him a cute little teddy bear like the one from AI, but instead he has unsettling and kind of terrifying human features. Because he too runs off biotech, a product of David Cronenberg's Build-A-Bear workshop. Even innocent, good-natured toys for children in the setting are still part of the nightmare, especially when you know where the research to make things like Moses came from. It's similar to Stasis, where they confront you with the horror of how the sausage is made, which has real-life basis, but is amped up to even more ghoulish levels here. It gives you lots of interesting aspects to think about like that, when it's intended. There are two drawbacks to the graphics, and one is by far my biggest problem with the game. The first is there are plenty of pre-rendered cutscenes, and actually very visually ambitious for a team of this size. But it is in that zone where the motion capture or facial animation isn't quite caught up with the fidelity of the models, so dialogue can be slightly out of sync, or characters can look firmly in the uncanny valley territory. There are still some genuinely great sequences, but there are also plenty of times where you see that budget coming through. It's not a huge deal, but the second is more tricky. See, you frequently find PDAs from other characters, and they have these little animated portraits. It reminded me of something like the classic Fallout games, but something felt off. The frequently high cheekbones and gaunt faces, strange designs for characters like a chief medical officer or a biologist, and that nodding. Oh dear god, it's Balenciaga. I'm gonna take a shot in the dark and say these are AI characters. This is a can of worms with good reason, but let's examine these inside of the game itself. To its credit, the weird uncanny valley effect in these faces does feel appropriate, but many designs don't match their logs or just look too artificial. It becomes a problem when you show a major character and the AI couldn't decide whether or not he was wearing glasses. This is so aggravating and distracting for a few reasons. There's other AI art too, I see nonsense language down here, but none of it is necessary. You'll come across computer terminals that foreshadow future events or give you more insight into what's happening. This is all well and good when there's intention behind them. Others are just nonsense, scary image. It's a cheap way to add production value that it didn't need, and worse, it distracts from the actual story. Does this clue have meaning to it, or was it nonsense that an AI put together? They're in the same places, so I don't know. What's really sad is that some are obvious. Like here you have some scientists with the fucked up hands, which is the mark of the beast for AI for now, but then they have another image where they're zoomed in, but they blurred out the hands for some reason. But it's the middle ground ones, where maybe an artist made this and it means something, or it's just noise, and it's hard to tell. I actually went through and read publication reviews for this game, which gave it a lot of glowing, well-deserved praise, but none of them mentioned this. I don't think I have eagle eyes for this either, but it means it's at a point where a lot of people will not notice it, and I find that genuinely unsettling. Because it's not a bad, cheap-looking game, it's a great game. It is the biggest attraction it has, and none of it is necessary. The faces look odd, the series has done that before, whatever. But sprinkling in nonsense next to things with intention it's just sad. As in, it legitimately makes me sad. You could strip it all out today and it wouldn't change the game. It's non-essential, like I said. It's like they built a rocket ship and then put a propeller on the front. Just get it off, nobody likes it. Or maybe they did or didn't notice it, but either way, I feel a bit crazier. You might think I'm a Luddite, but in this case, the game is showing me one thing coherent, and then Grape Fence post ambulance carbon like nothing happened. Nothing did happen. This is nothing. It's nothing that takes away from the work with vision behind it. Graphics are one of the keys to unlocking emotions in players, offering a journey of discovery where imagination meets artistic expression, and we put much effort into telling a story through the visuals alone. And man, do I agree with that, Stasis Bone Totem art book. Fun fact, when I do a video on a game, whether I liked it or not, I usually go and buy the art book afterwards. I'm glad I looked ahead this time. Speaking of brush desk Tylenol, let's talk about the audio. For the soundtrack, Mark Morgan returned to compose the game. Most tracks are suspenseful and tense and blend right into the rest of the ambience. The characters also get their own twists on the exploration themes. Charlie's can have more somber horns, Matt can have guitars or folksy strings, and Moses can get these childlike jack-in-the-box toy sounds to remind you that he is at his baseline a toy. It's usually in the background maintaining the oppression, but in those big emotional moments, it does come out more to the forefront and can really elevate it. There are some guest composers and remixes as well, and the music can get more wild and a little more tribal at points. Others are like electronic remixes of Orthodox church music. It's a neat soundtrack, very fitting. The in-game sound is good too, certainly way better than Stasis, but the actual audio mixing can still be weird at a few points, or can feel like sound effects are missing entirely. It comes across as strange. The elaborate deaths are now full-on cutscenes, which is great, but some can also suffer a similar issue. There can also be strange mixing on some side characters, but the main cast is light years beyond Stasis. It can be a little melodramatic at a few points, but that was also par for the course.
Without a family, man, alone in the world, trembles with the cold.
But I don't mind that because I really like the dynamic between the main characters. Charlie wants to push forward while Mac is unsure and wants to evaluate the risks, but they want the same thing and clearly love each other, and that comes through in the delivery. Hope's loss made Mac more cautious and Charlie more reckless. Then Moses is childlike, but also a caretaker in a jailbroken state where he's still spitting out PSAs sometimes, and he has to learn about the concept of a corpse.
Hello, I am Moses. What is your name?
Moses found another body.
This place smells bad. I would like to go home now.
Gotta be fucking kidding me.
Language, Mac. Goodness. This could cause injury if it lays here.
I'm gonna cause injury to you if you keep spouting out public service announcements.
And as the game brought in new characters, they all brought something to either strengthen or challenge that tie between them. One of my favorite characters was arguably an antagonist, and a lot of that came from how fun their delivery was. There are some rough patches, but the sound is good overall. Let's move on to the gameplay. It's an adventure game, this genre is full of madness, something your mileage may vary. On the Moon Logic scale, Bone Totem is extremely good. For starters, the game can be actively helpful if you do want that. By simply right-clicking, you'll activate a ping that shows all highlightable items and all interactables. So you can and should try to find things the old-fashioned way, but if you're about to leave or unsure, you can just hit the ping. This also let them use much darker environments that would be hell on earth to try and pixel hunt through. Even without this, what you're supposed to interact with is usually logical. And the pings aren't just restricted to the overworld, they can also be in the close-ups. Items will usually have a shine or be placed in an obvious way, but I did miss some at points. It's always wise to double check and not miss your breast milk pump. Anyways, if you are morbidly staring at a screen for too long, like you're an entombed silver-ranked gamer tired of their 20,000 leagues under the sea, you'll outright get a hint icon where a character can push you in the right direction. It is a lot of optional help, but the more it keeps players away from an outright walkthrough, the better. Most puzzles feel grounded, and the harder ones usually involve clue hunting. You might think you know how a machine works, but then a PDA says they overrode part of that function. Many are as simple as they look, but if they don't work in the way you think they should, it usually involves exploring. Playing 3 characters, you'll frequently be in different parts of Deep Sea 15. The system easily could have been a pain in the ass, but it is really engaging. All items you find are stored in a group quantum storage device. It's like Dropbox for your toolbox. Characters can pass items between each other at any time, and each has their own commentary on it. You get extra insight about the world, or their mindset, or their character history. These are fun on their own, but the characters can also manipulate the items. Mac has strength from a robotic arm, so he can separate an item into 2 pieces, or twist and bend them. So if Charlie finds a twisted piece of metal, she can send it over to Mac, you switch over to him, and then straighten it out. On Charlie's side, she's much more technical, so by giving her 2 items, she can combine or repair them. And no, you can't accidentally make stupid shit or break an item you need and softlock yourself. When I did feel stuck in a puzzle, 9 out of 10 times, the solution was switching over to somebody else. This was happening to me more early on because it does take some getting used to. But when you get the hang of it, it is really engaging. There are plenty of stimulating and downright weird puzzles. And ones where you need to find clues on a PDA or a surface or in a computer somewhere. They're not all great, but it does give you a good variety and plenty of tools to stop you from getting stuck. You may have seen some QR codes, but you don't need any for puzzles. To be fair, I didn't check many because I am biased against these. I didn't want to wave my phone in front of a video game I was enjoying, but there could be extra help in there sometimes. What the fuck is this? It's not too subtle to go, ooh, what's this? And I've only seen it in one other game so far, and it was not a mark of quality. It's not really an issue, and there could be other games doing this and I just haven't played them. I just thought it was curious. You can and will be stumped at points or wonder why you're pouring embalming fluid into a flamethrower, but for the genre, this is pretty great. As for the story, it does carry on a lot of the same themes from Stasis, except some have shifted around a bit and evolved even further. In Stasis, Kane Corp was a not Wayland Yutani, like a Leyland Toyota, but it got into the nitty-gritty of how companies do vile shit, in a way that most people who have dealt with corporate will deeply understand. You've seen the dumbass the manager wouldn't fire because they're part of their gossip gang, but they weren't in charge of, the flesh machine. Bone Totem is taking ideas like that and then pushing them into new sci-fi extremes. Like if you've worked at a Walmart, specifically the morning shift, you get the sense they might want you dead. Some people embrace the dance to make their day easier, but what if they embraced Sam Walton as their god? And Sam Walton has come back from the dead. And with the Nexus, they do have a tangible afterlife. This makes their power a lot more existential. If you have indebted family members, they could reward them by releasing them into the Nexus. Sure, promise the afterlife in the same tone EA tech support promises Battlefield DLC. You'll even come across more simple Kane AI that argues back and forth on whether the company should be a corporation or a religion, because their goals can't fully align with each other, so having Mac be a follower was a good choice. At first, I thought it was strange he wasn't gunning to get out of a Kane facility since this would put his afterlife at risk. But then I realized Hope didn't have the chip, so he knows she won't be there. When Mac thinks about or comes across those who died before the Nexus, it sombers him. And sure, you can easily connect this kind of thinking to many religions, but I don't think it's an anti-religious game. It looks at a lot of aspects of it, good and bad. It's not elaborated on, but it's said that Kane has disproven God, which I'm sure employees thought on their own some days. But Kane appears to be the main religion. So when you first step foot on Deep Sea 15, and the first PDA you read is from a man having visions of being a flesh goop instead of a giant church seeing visions of Jesus, this is weird for even more reasons than normal. I'm gonna get more into the story now, which is a big undercut for an adventure game, so it's on Steam, GOG, and soon coming to console. Hopefully this will be gone by then, so if you don't want spoilers, go to here. There were moments where I thought Bone Totem's story was made for me in a lab, even before the Forbidden Ancient Ones. It's some of the most fun I've had with an underwater horror game since Soma, or Iron Lung, or Barotrauma. Well, not Barotrauma.
Jesus fucking Christ.
They waste no time getting you into the mystery. The empty oil rig and Come to Jesus PDA was the first warning, but the first door you open has the horribly mutilated body, with flowers or fungus either growing or placed inside of the eye sockets. Either way, they clearly did not do this to themselves. Deep Sea 15 was stationed above the Mule, the mobile underwater laboratory environment. Something went wrong down there, a quarantine was ordered, and now everyone is dead or missing. Deep Sea 15 was not an oil rig, it was some kind of research lab. Now, starting off with lab gone empty and possible fungus problem, it seems like it could be a retread of Stasis. The Groom Lake couldn't be recovered, and this is the new lab. To clear that up, I am going to talk more about Kane. Kane, the free game. This takes place in a different off-world Kane Corp research facility, one that is next to the Groom Lake, which is being salvaged or retrofitted. Space is big and lawless, and the company prefers to do their dirty work off-world if they can help it. In this case, the protagonist had gotten pregnant from an employee who was part of a massive plan to impregnate her with Kane. He talks to her the whole game because his memories were implanted or something, and she just writes it off as a weird voice. Until she births him, so that's how Kane came back. Kane is a fucking bizarre game. But it did establish the company has all of space to work with. They can do whatever they want out there with no oversight, so if they're bothering with a rig, it's because it has to be right here. Staff did see scientists with small, strange flesh creatures, but that's par for the course. Deep Sea 15 has shockingly little information on what was happening. Moses does prove himself useful breaking into ship systems, but Max still despises his presence. There are plenty of corpses, but the only tangible leads come from a biochemist's report. They were experimenting with something called P-139. They were testing on bone marrow, though it's not clear for what, and in storage, they have a gigantic ancient disc and some kind of sarcophagus. This is Mac's breaking point, and he wants to go now.
God damn it, you take too many risks too easily.
And you don't fight hard enough for things that are important. Mac, this one time, will you just trust me? We're all we've got left.
We're all we've got left.
Fine. Okay. Okay.
They'll take a quick ride down to the Mule and pop back up if things look bad.
Yes, there are bodies. We've worked with bodies before. So far there's been
So
nothing.
far.
Why?
I'm sorry, Mac, but you know I'm right. You know without this, we're at a dead end. We won't be able
Are we
to...
underwater?
Just for a little while, Mose.
I do not like water. In water you are powerless.
At least the bear gets it.
This is the moment I realized I would play the game all night. We're moving seamlessly from bizarre, well-established sci-fi horror into something more Lovecraft. At least it sure looks that way, since obviously Kane wasn't behind whatever that was. Though what's great about it is it's still just some foreshadowing. The mule was the main lab, and man-made horrors will still carry on to the very end.
This is not safe for children.
After a series of unfortunate events, James Cameron's Wonka Vader is swamped, and the group is separated throughout the mule. This is where you get more of the horror of the setting, with some nice callbacks to the start. Like earlier when you found a heart inside of a corpse that was still beating, nobody raised an eyebrow. Many Kane organs will outlive the users. When Moses comes across another beating heart inside of a corpse, now they're horrified, because the body is covered in plants and they don't know why the heart is beating. They're so desensitized to the visuals of biotech that it's just the abstract that bothers them now. DIY home repair now requires some surgical knowledge. The mule has plenty of other examples. A lot does look disturbing, but because of this setting, only certain things will bother the characters. The server's working off giant brains, which are now not working because they're rotten or dying. A bad sign, but business as usual. A different brain birthing a large, human hand-covered spider creature. Now this is some cause for concern. There's plenty of strange biotech to find, but I won't go through those. Besides having dreams of Jesus in a church, other employees had different visions. An engineer dreams of being ritualistically sacrificed, until he microdosed on P139 and then also saw Jesus, rising from a quivering mass of flesh. The company didn't write off these visions, but instead began to test it on products in stasis. All criminals or volunteers who were in debt to the company, of course. One researcher addresses this more directly, saying that Kane doesn't need to hide what they do anymore. Oh right, she also monitors the dreams of the products and has fallen in love with one and is sure they'll run away together. That's thwarted by the product having something growing in her. There's a separate problem from P139.
Loud noises.
Oh yeah. Yeah! What the hell was that?
I didn't see. What happened?
It's like some kind of giant fucking insect.
Language, Mac.
Like the Groom Lake, it's a collection of problems, but this time around, they do have closer ties. The PDAs are all about digging into the central mystery and the ties between them. This did come at a cost where you don't get the more personal, reflective ones like from the first game. Those could have very detailed side stories and characters that Bone Totem only gets slightly into, focusing more on some central pillars. There is already a lot of mystery meat to dig through. Back to that, protocol was being broken all over the place, with one biologist awakening products from stasis to test P139. You learn that it's a microbe, and it can be found in most of the local sea life. The cold and pressure mainly keeps it dormant, but many animals live extraordinarily long lives with it. While traveling the seafloor, Charlie comes across a gigantic maggot that's been feeding off a whale fall for who knows how long. And it's been feeding next to the carcass of a Spanish galleon. When the shark carcass gets heated back up, it's moving. The microbe is incredible at keeping things alive, and that's what the Kane Corp is interested in. A disgruntled employee released it into the mule, and it apparently causes madness. A surviving researcher named Ferran contacts you over the radio, and he's completely incoherent. He does know where an escape vehicle is, if you bust him out too.
Black. Dark. Can't see. Can't move.
Infected staff would confuse dreams with real life. Heavily infected products for testing could bleed from every pore but still be coherent and suddenly speak Russian. A scientist believes they're being eaten by cannibals. A researcher whose brain was put in a product's body to extend their own life is now being haunted by the old body who is tormenting them. It's a madhouse, and the corporate quarantine team had been murdering anyone they came across. There's also mention of something called a Newman buried in the facility, which is something living that has value to the corporation. And all of this was happening next to the discovered ruins of an ancient civilization. And they had mills for grinding up bones. This is getting dense.
Kane's reign.
Are those bodies? It's a creature made of bodies?
The civilization was in a pocketed cave system, one that Kane put a proper sealed cap over before breaking into it. There are still a few ancient machines working, but still no sign of any living staff who have been similarly butchered. The insects in the cave system have the same gigantism and longevity as the sea life, but they're mainly feeding off the dead and don't appear to be actively hunting. This isn't the work of aliens either, as the civilization was an earthly one, but sunk thousands of years ago. Their culture was more scientifically advanced than their peers, but their brutality could put even the Aztecs to shame, which is saying something. As for the Newman, whatever it is, it's important enough that it's included in the religion's prayers. There was even news that a new one was born after the old one was acting up in the Nexus. The ruins have more ritualistically killed Kane staff, more working machines. The bone grinders are still operational, and get this, the structures are thousands of years old, but the newest bones are from 1650. Ferran says there's a lot that doesn't make sense about their culture, like dating being all over the place, iconography from way later civilizations. The most baffling is that Kane found this place by picking up an old distress signal, a Soviet one from the 1980s, and they did find a few bodies. They were found on the ocean floor, but inside the ruins, they found the ancients had carved a large stone symbol of the Red Fleet. How the hell is this possible? Bone Totem throws a lot at you. There are some dead ends from leads that were just Kane experimenting around, or the microbe acting on its own, and it is fun to uncover all of it, which is why I hated the little distractions in such a compelling story. I'm going to have to abridge a lot, and while I won't show everything, you can still get off now. I'll be ducking most of the character moments because they won't have the same impact in this video. With that, things take another turn when Charlie starts calling out for Caliban.
Caliban?
You're here for Caliban. Oh, why am I not surprised?
Caliban? Who's Caliban?
The one she brought you here to find. It all makes sense now. Moses is confused. You're a boat captain. You know the odds of stumbling upon any one specific object in the middle of the ocean are infinitesimally small. Much less during a storm.
No, I was there. I was there when...
He's right, Mac. We didn't just find the rig.
Charlie led you in, and Mac can yell all he wants, but she won't elaborate because she's so busy looking for Caliban. She seems terrified to tell him why. You know, beyond the fact she led them to the Mangale 4D experience and then directly into the Tomb of Unspeakable Evil. When she makes contact with Caliban, Mac is more furious than he's been all game. Caliban is a Kane AI, an unshackled one and not like the holograms you saw earlier, and for Mac, this is an existential experience. Caliban was trapped down here, but an anti-Kane terrorist organization called Yellow Leaf contacted Charlie to break him out. Caliban even correctly guesses it is Yellow Leaf because he is very good at collating.
They want to help it.
Help it? They want to destroy Kane. That's all they've ever wanted, and if they get their hands on one of their AIs, they definitely can. This isn't happening. This isn't happening. Charlie, this is one of the Newman. It's sacred. The fact that we're even talking with it.
This is a Newman, and Caliban's biomechanical shell is rotting and needs a transfer. Mac never outright says why it's divine, but it does make sense. The Nexus is a massive afterlife network which required 9 different AI in order to run it properly. It's not said why he was disconnected, but Kane Corp happily left him at the bottom of the ocean. It's unlikely anyone at Kane wants to be the one to kill a Newman. Because they manage the virtual afterlife, interacting with the dead there, but also interact with our world, this essentially makes Caliban a tangible angel. And he's a demanding little shit who wants to deal with terrorists, so Mac's worldview is crumbling. And his day just gets worse.
Wait, why?
A sign of trust. We will be bonded, inseparable. You should be honored.
Charlie, no. Don't do this.
I have to.
Why? What is this all about?
We can have her back. Mac?
Her who?
Hope. We can have Hope back.
Yellow Leaf has already cloned Hope. It jumped past the point of should we do this to she's already here. Using prediction techniques and all other kinds of factors, she is based off Hope on the day she died. Understandably, Big Mac is not loving it.
Hear her. What is that?
Cease the bickering. The decision is made. No alternatives exist. I am Newman.
I'm not talking to you. Charlie.
You can see the beats of a more simple story where Mac would convince Charlie not to go through with it and Hope won't really be our daughter, but it blew right past the ethical what-ifs and now asks, what do you do now that this is here? Which is a much harder question to grapple with. And Caliban will only merge with Charlie. I tried the others. Caliban doesn't take over her brain, but this is yet more Kane heresy. Even if Mac is starting to buy out of it, Kane will never stop hunting them. A Newman is too damn powerful and important, knows most of their secrets, and Caliban is vengeful. Charlie knew this too, but what they had to offer was simply too great.
I'm scared.
Stop it.
I'm sure you are, sweetheart, but you're safe here. Nothing can hurt you.
I guess whether you view this as a miracle or extremely fucked up does depend on your worldview, which is reflected here. Mac never wants to know about this again, Charlie wants to convince him, and Moses fully accepts that she is just back. Again, it's hard to pick a correct answer when a being who believes that she is hope is back somewhere. It's more philosophical sci-fi than I expected going in, but it's very welcome. Plus, Caliban is added onto my favorite AI characters in video games. He's a brilliant and egotistical prick who's exceptional at making predictions, but if he doesn't know something or accidentally gets impressed, he gets pissy.
The dotted lines are an anomaly here.
What does that mean?
It means Caliban was never able to conclusively determine the...
I am Caliban. I am Newman. If I am not capable of collating an answer, then no answer is capable of being collated.
Of course. Apologies.
Sensitive little thing, isn't it?
What I find fascinating is that even though he is super intelligent, he's not too far in proximity from Moses. He has a deep, intimate understanding of concepts like death and grief. He also knows how Cain has used that to manipulate human beings, so sees himself as beyond emotion. And when Mac agrees, that's a wake-up call for him too. Even though the plan is for his sake, when confronted, Caliban immediately points out how it's clearly not the real hope and what they're doing is irrational. But with his pettiness, ego, and desire for revenge, he is emotional too, but he doesn't see it that way. He conceptually gets everything, but can't self-reflect. On the other hand, Moses feels a ton and isn't afraid to express it. He's very self-reflective, but has trouble wording how he feels in detail. Mac blames him for the death of his daughter, but never noticed how much Moses blames himself too.
Mac is right. My fault. I am not a good bear.
When it turns out Ferran is trapped and there's no way to rescue him and he'll die with the life support, Moses bonds with him and they support each other up until the end of the game. Ferran being doomed doesn't mean the rest of his life will have no value. They stay in contact over the radio and Ferran remains helpful. Moses has to confront his fear of water and by extension, his guilt over Hope dying. And Ferran is who pushes him forward.
I am failing again.
Those feelings. Lies. Push forward. Push forward, and I will prove it to you.
Hope.
Here, strength does not matter. Only courage.
It's a nice little side story about how two broken people can still support and help each other. And even while the Newmen are supposed to be divine, Moses is much more of an angel. In the Hallmark way, because Caliban still wins the biblically accurate design. Caliban sees things like love leading to grief as a weakness. He will never understand that grief is the final, most painful and purest expression of love. Grief shows you how much you had, and Caliban will never understand that, but Moses could.
I am a very smart bear now.
The good news is that Caliban's freakish intelligence does reveal a lot about the Ancient Ones.
This is them submerged? But how? How could they survive?
Air pockets within their structures and geographical anomalies combined with the natural resistances of the society itself. 93% accuracy prediction. Food was scarce, but a new option presented itself in the form of a mutation.
Do I want to know?
The Zeb Hanal civilization did sink, but it swam. The microbe was once a carnivorous plant which mutated due to the new conditions after the sinking of the island, which was from simple tectonic activity. The Zeb were changed by the microbe parasites, but so was the local environment too. They farm and cultivate insects who in turn feed off the ground-up bones of their dead. And that's present tense because a remnant population is still around. Again, the game explains this in much greater detail. So Cain employees were being murdered by the Zeb remnant, right?
They were Cain scientists.
No. They were sacrifices.
What was that?
The bones from 1650 were likely from Spanish treasure hunters, but the signal Cain found in the bodies were from the Soviet Union. While testing new kinds of sensor equipment, a Russian sub called the Lima crashed into one of the cave systems. The crew, thinking they were trapped aboard, got into extreme measures like cannibalism. You can still find the remains of their pantry. Their commander, Captain Boynia, was a devout Orthodox man who fell further into mania when the crew started to break out the people jerky. When they opened up the hatch to end it all and found they were run aground, this was more of a curse. The captain began succumbing to the same parasite madness. But it never was a true madness, as those infected with the microbe share memories. Some staff maintained memories, but others were overwritten by an ancient civilization, or Russians, or Spanish. But the influence spread both ways, which is how the Zeeb had such strange architecture. Memories from civilizations the Spanish or others saw. The Zeeb's goal was to return to the surface one day to take revenge on the old gods who sunk them. But when Captain Boinia linked to them, they saw the marvels of his world, and he shared with them the marvels of his religion. The Zeeb try to recreate the memories they have of the surface now.
Pulled from my memories, my emotions.
This is how you remember the world above?
Creative license, brother.
The new wonders captivated them, but by the time of the game, they had long stopped listening to Boinia. Mac is feeling the effects of the microbe, and now Boinia talks to him directly, as he is still alive somewhere. In a little reversal, he too is amazed at what the future has, but he's confident the microbe can still destroy everything. He tried to placate them as a kind of penance for the horrible things he and his crew did in despair, and you do see firsthand how vicious the Zeeb can be. But they are still human at their core, and not too different to how things are now. When Charlie finds a machine that Zeeb elders would use to trick their people about the nature of their afterlife, Max scoffs at it. How can you believe if you don't know it's real, like the Nexus?
Based on what collation? Based on what evidence?
Unprompted, Caliban offers to tell him everything about the Nexus and trade faith for straight knowledge. After all, he was adamant it was real and not faith before, right? Well, Mac declines. Naming the daughter it is very on the nose, but the game is all about hope, or the lack of hope. A complete lack of hope can create a new ambition towards something darker. Hope and belief can do a lot of good if pointed in the right direction, but they can do a lot of evil too, especially if your very dreams and ambitions are being manipulated, like the Forbidden Ones wanting to wipe out the surface. Luckily, Boinia's sub did have a nuclear device aboard that a very smart bear has now gotten a hold of. Everyone has to endure and see some horrible things, but Mac does make it to Boinia, or at least a memory of him. This is how the church down here would look if he wanted, and how he presented his ideas to the people. Considering all he's seen and done, he's more than willing to be the one to set off the nuke.
You are a stronger man than me.
The fire.
May your soul find peace.
Again, I am leaving a lot out this round, but this was what I thought I could talk about without selling a lot of other moments short. I hammered through the game in a short time frame because I could not put it down. For how insanely bleak Stasis was, Bone Totem has a lot of heart to it. It has great themes that give you a lot to chew on, some outstanding dialogue and character moments, and a great variety of engaging puzzles and locations along the way. I love this game, which is why the cheap AI stuff pains me so. It distracts from an otherwise home run to the point that it feels like a monkey's paw. It would feel more natural for me to scream like a feral animal for people to get it, and it's the one thing that makes me throw an asterisk on there. The console release is still coming, and this could be reverted by then, and I will update the pinned comment if that does, because what's already here is excellent. And I'd rather the people who created those wonderful things put more into the game instead of relying on Midjourney or whatever it was. It got a little deeper than I expected this round, but no worries, Halloween is right around the corner. Expect more spooky games and a new adventure. I can feel the excitement. Have I considered hiring an editor? I've gotten many applications over the years and I appreciate all of them, but no, because I'm far too particular and I would probably waste more time trying to go over things. And yes, it could mean ultimately more uploads go on the channel, but I think people would pick up on them feeling different, and for better or worse, I want to be the one making these videos. I like doing this, I don't want to outsource talking about what I think is interesting. Has violence in a game ever made me squeamish? The last time I can remember it, I was much younger, but it was the Strogification in Quake 4. Quake 4 has a lot of gross body horror in general, it's pretty cool. What other childhood aquatic video game enemies bothered me? I don't remember his name, but there was the awful anglerfish from Banjo-Tooie. A friend helped me find the secret gun in Resident Evil 4, the one in the lake. And it's not an enemy, but the oceans in Morrowind did unsettle me. I should find more undersea nightmare games to play because I don't think I get tired of them.
I do not like these sounds. They are wrong.